So a few weeks ago, just after we made the bed, unpacked some clothes, put pictures up on the wall of our youngest child's freshman dorm, and right after the requisite run to the hardware store for the extension cord we forgot, our child turned to my wife and I and said, I don't think you need to be here. So while we stayed for the official parents orientation program the next morning, when they gently again encouraged us to leave, looking over our shoulders to see who of their new friends might be walking around, we gave them one last hug. I choked up a bit and we left. And at that moment, I had two overwhelming emotions. On the one hand, I didn't want to let them go. I wanted to hold them close, protect them from the world's harms, freeze the moments of being involved in each other's daily lives. But slightly even more so, I wanted them to go free, to accomplish new things, to chart their own path without us there. As a friend in a similar position shared, we desperately want them to turn around and run back for an extra hug, and slightly more so hope they don't. I've been reflecting on this mix of emotions as I think about the last 12 months. It's been an incredibly hard year for so many. It was just a year ago on Monday, of course, the terrorists attacked Israel, leading to a massive war in Israel and Gaza, hostages, sexual violence, many dying, the escalation with Hezbollah, the hundreds of Iranian rockets showering Israel on Tuesday, violent and charged protests, blatant and insidious anti-Semitism in the United States. This has been the hardest year of my life to be a Jew. And beyond Jewish experiences, this year also brought a highly vitriolic political campaign, lived experiences of climate change, more mass shootings, economic uncertainty. I know so many people who have lost loved ones, lives cut short by surprise, and also after long illness. And at the same time, in my small circle, we're honestly doing well. I hope this doesn't come across as being insensitive to others' pain, but I'm also feeling very blessed today. Blame it on good therapy, privilege, daily gratitude practice, hilarious internet memes, coconut, pet, otherwise your choice. Most days I feel positive and optimistic, and also depressed and pessimistic at the same time. Oh, how Jewish. I joke, but a special feature of Judaism is that it allows us, even forces us to hold both joy and sadness at the same time. It's not about oscillating between emotions, but integrating them into a mashup that both reflects the human condition and also helps us to build muscles to live in reality. Judaism teaches us to avoid chasing the unrealistic mirage of constant happiness and helps us instead to live more complicated yet inspired and ultimately, I believe, more joyous lives. I was reminded of this when a friend stopped sitting Shiva a few days early because the week of mourning intersected with the holiday of Shavuot. And that's because Jewish law says that sitting Shiva is halted by a holiday. Shabbat merely pauses Shiva, but Chagim stop it entirely. This is an incredibly painful law, and it's one I personally have found very upsetting over the years. You've lost a family member, you're in mourning, and you have to go and celebrate a holiday. Doesn't make sense. And yet the Gemara says that the mitzvah for rejoicing as a community overrides the mitzvah of individual mourning. This feels harsh and overly simplistic, rejecting the warmth and the humanity we hope to bring to those in mourning. But it's actually more complicated. While individual mourning rituals are put on hold, our rabbis do not believe that the emotion of joy cancels out the emotion, the darkness of despair. Instead, the rabbis explore the intersection between Evel, between mourning, and Simcha, joy. They focus on the laws of what to do during Shiva. And from those laws, from the Shiva laws, we derive what to do during Chol HaMoed, the joyous days of Sukkot and Passover. So it's no accident that many of the practices during Shiva and Chol HaMoed are the same, such as not cutting hair, doing excessive work, doing laundry. As one of my teachers and friends, Rabbi Sarah Hurwitz, shared with me, the emotional lines between grief and simcha, between mourning and celebration, become blurred, and our hearts expand to experience the whole. So my lesson from the practice of Shiva ending for Chagim is that despite the grief and with community support, we find ways to experience joy, not immediately, but over time, not instead of, but in addition to. We don't move on, we move forward, always carrying both joy and pain. Hazorim b'dima brina iksoru. Those who sow in tears will reap with shouts of joy. A couple weeks ago, I was speaking with my parents about this Devar Torah, and my dad shared a story from 21 years ago. When our son, our first child, was born, his father, my grandfather, was in his final days. And ultimately, my father was faced with a decision about whether to come to our son's bris in Chicago or stay at the bedside of his dying father in Iowa City. He asked 5 rabbis and scholars, all who said the same thing: he should be at the bris. My grandfather passed away that same day. To be clear, my father didn't put aside his grief at my grandfather's passing. He was still in pain, of course. I was too, as was our whole family, as we worked to honor my grandfather's memory while welcoming our son into the Jewish community on a simultaneously painful and beautiful day. And as a coda, the younger child who we just dropped off at college was named for that grandfather several years later. When someone passes away, we surely are sad. And also, when we think of them, we might smile, we might laugh, and we probably will shed tears of both sorrow and happiness at the same time, expressing our humanity with all those feelings mixed together as an impressionist watercolor. My friend Rabbi Avi Killip taught me a beautiful vision, which is articulated in the book of Ezra, when describing how the Jews shouted out to God as they laid the foundation of the second temple. There were actually 2 kinds of shouts. The elderly, who had experienced and seen the first temple, wept loudly for the reminder of what they had lost. The young, who were first experiencing this new physical manifestation of their connection to divinity, shouted B'simcha laharim kol, joyously at the tops of their voices. And the shouts of sorrow and the shouts of joy merged, so you couldn't tell the difference between the 2. Our text gives us permission to confront change with both kinds of shouting: the sorrow of what has been lost in the past and the excitement for what might be in the future, and a charge to weave them together. This year on Simchat Torah, 1 year on the Jewish calendar since the tragedies of October 7th, the youngest in our community will celebrate and laugh and eat s'mores and dance with the Torah, because that's what kids should do. And I will weep, holding the memories of that profoundly awful day and the challenges of the months since, while also being in awe of the children's spirit and the potential for their future. I was in Israel 2 weeks ago, which is my 3rd time since October 7th. It was arguably the hardest. The people I met were so down. Even those typically optimistic were drained and tired and skeptical about what might change in Gaza, in the north, with reservists being called up for their 3rd tours, 4th tours, let alone what's going to happen with the government. I've been to Israel for work something like 30 times over the last 15 years. I've never heard people as sad before. It was profoundly hard. And also, there were sparks. I met a couple of people who had just moved to Israel from the United States. A colleague of mine just got engaged. There's a group of Jewish and Palestinian mid-level political leaders who are meeting to envision a new reality from this moment of truly shared pain. And I found myself one afternoon sitting at a cafe holding a friend's 8-week-old baby, keeping the Devar G-rated. I'll leave it to you to do the math. But I'm inspired by the headspace of those parents who decided to have a child after October 7th. Right after October 7th. September 1st is Israel's first day of school, a day known for balloons and banners and joyous music. And it was also the day that Hirsch Goldberg Poland and 5 others were found murdered in the tunnels. Parents told me over and over again about walking their children to school, with the kids excited for the new year and the parents crying. The children shouted with joy, the parents with sadness. In Ecclesiastes, many of us know the lines made famous by the birds, for those who haven't studied their ancient texts. To everything there is a season, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, time to dance. But the poet Yehuda Amichai says, Ecclesiastes was wrong. A person needs to love and hate at the same time, to laugh and cry with the same eyes, and with the same hands to throw stones and to gather them, to make love in war and war in love. It isn't about being happy or being sad, or about alternating between the two. Jewish life pushes us to experience it all, giving us ideas, frameworks, and building our resilience to do so. And we need that muscle, not just for holding joy and sadness, but to help us navigate what is a very complicated world. My friend and teacher, Rabbi Mike Urim, talks about Judaism's embrace of complexity over simplicity. He shares this midrash in which Moses asked God whether something is pure or impure. And God responds with 49 reasons it is pure and 49 reasons why it is impure. Poetic, perhaps, but not so helpful as a way to lead community. So Moses goes to God and says, how am I supposed to know which it is? Like, enough with the riddles. Is it pure or impure? And God says, figure it out. Talk to each other. I'm not going to give you an answer. The Hebrew here adds a whole other level, though. While many English versions of this midrash relate the story as God sharing 49 reasons for purity and 49 reasons for impurity, the Hebrew word for reasons is actually panim, which means faces. How much profound does the story get when we imagine 49 actual people saying one thing and 49 other people saying the opposite? Now, this isn't an intellectual exercise. Now we need to wrestle with who those people are. Do they make us angry, inspired, joyful, sad? Now imagine they're your friends. Now imagine they're your family members. And now we have to find ways to be compassionate for all the complex reasons and emotions that they are bringing into the interaction. Especially in moments, we need to be able to hold contrasting emotions to be able to navigate complicated ideas. Whether we confront questions about whether it's good or bad, right or wrong, my team, your team, Democrat, Israel, pro-Israel, Democrat, Republican, pro-Israel, anti-Israel. Yeah. Judaism teaches us to reject the simplistic, understand the depths of others' beliefs, embrace that answers are hard and nuance is necessary. Case in point, the vast majority of people I know want Israel to be safe and secure as a Jewish and democratic state, and also want Israel to treat its minority Palestinian citizenry with ethics and respect. Extremists call that view, which I would say is moderate and mainstream, either as colonial apologist or anti-Zionist. And they often act violently in accordance with that oversimplified view. The world is just not that simple. As a friend in Israel told me, the answer to uncertainty is not certainty, it is bravery. I hope to find that bravery, to feel comfortable amid conflicting emotions and to resist the pull towards simplicity. But it's hard. Another Israeli friend and wise teacher, have you noticed the theme? I have lots of Israeli friends who are also wise teachers. Rabbi Tamar Applebaum, she shared with me how she holds all those mixed emotions and complexity of living. I let myself cry, she said. I let myself cry. Tears come as we experience pain, loss, sorrow, sad memories, happy memories, joy, elation, confusion, and as they certainly did for me on the day of our son's bris and my grandfather's passing, and as we dropped our second child off at college, the mix of all above. Our bodies react to all those emotions in the same way, with tears. The Torah begins with a promise from God that there will always be light and darkness, not one, but both. Our challenge is to see that as a gift, as a tool for living and engagement in the world. That is a Jewish superpower. Shana Tova, Gemar Chatima Tova, and may you have the strength, insight, and patience to engage with all that makes us human.